All right, so this is recording before. I'm not sure if Dan Holloway is still alive or dead. We had this international student Bible study way back in the day. I was in college, like 20 years ago or something. And so a lot of those kids, some of them were just travelers, and some of them were like actually studying real English to do business. Uh, like some of the kids went to London School of Economics afterwards. A lot of them, like I think Fabio went to Harvard afterwards, and Apollo was running some stuff out in Brazil. You name it. A bunch of students from Japan. The Chinese folks, like I think Tony's dad bought him like a brand new Lamborghini when he arrived. Juju Er's dad was third in command for the Chinese import export of all of China, and then like a bunch of kids from Chile's playing soccer. Pascal from Germany, Tony from all the kids from Germany. I remember all you guys. Don't worry. I go to all those countries. Adrian from Hungary, Dominique from Switzerland, Raj from Iran, the girl in my English class from Saudi Arabia, all the kids from France, bunch of the Germans. We got along pretty well back in the day when I was, the Citrix programmers from other countries too. That's kind of cool. Obviously Seoul, South Korea, Sung Tae and Sejin and so forth. And when I went over to Korea, a bunch of Jinhee's dad was part of like some investment club and living in Busan, taking the plane to Seoul. Well, see, the reason why I'm making these recordings now because soon their parents will pass away and they'll be the leaders. And I guess I got to look out for myself at some point. So I'm going to tell these stories. I did have a conversation with Charlie Kim of Bain and Company. So Bain and Company is a consulting firm started by Bill Bain and Patrick Graham, and they hired Mitt Romney back in the day. Mitt Romney's getting up there in age or whatever, and Mitt Romney spun off to form Bain. There's like Bain Capital and Company and so forth. They still work together, but they're still kind of like at some point they want to create their own deal because they realize, well, I have now defined my own culture and blah 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 blah. But Charlie Kim was a consultant for Bain Company. He's like loosely affiliated because his family, he's a Harvard MBA guy, did a lot of software analysis for some interesting companies. Bain and Company did some NPS score stuff, Net Promoter Score, which we used. I was a part of that program for a second or two when we were part of the marketing program. I was more on the front lines, being the person under. Not I know about the online Net Promoter Score that's traditionally used, but we had a call program to try to understand. We started off with a couple of people, and we scaled it out to 17 or 18 people, and it was part of like a program for like some network monitoring stuff, and also some server monitoring things. Post facto, it wasn't proactive; it was reactive. But it was more proactive than the true reaction. So it was like a little bit. It was more proactive that program than reactive, but some people would realize that it was that proactive. How are they supposed to know? They wouldn't. Anyways, so Charlie Kim and I had a conversation about this is about 2013. Got on the phone with Charlie. He did some software pricing for some high level analysis. His family owned a lot of the real estate in downtown Seoul. He really shared with me some. That conversation alone was worth its weight in gold potentially, or not. It depends on where I take the conversation. But his family they did commodities with African countries. They had to do the back end insurance for a lot of commodities. Because, when you're dealing with foreign markets, they have their own sovereign rules. And even if you're dealing with Russia, which has a non-extradition policy for U.S. nationals, for the people at the upper echelon, they don't have to worry about that stuff. But for the rest of us, there's always all kinds of different rules for all kinds of different people. So Charlie was like, when we sell rice to Africa, we do the insurance because we don't necessarily know if they're just going to take the rice and how much margin they're going to have because they're still disparate tribes. And whether that can be used in Africa, that can be used in really any South American country. And they have their own analysis of what it's going to cost and what it doesn't cost them. I like to work with countries like Morocco and like Siberia and Ukraine and stuff like that, and Belarus and Canada is always a good friend. They always pay more, and they don't mind paying more because they're like, we're Canada, and our currency is valued more than your dollar. So, and we know that, blah 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 blah. And the rule of law is actually better than ours, and all that. Mexico is always interesting. They're probably more wealthy, but they keep it under wraps, which is also an interesting strategy. But anyway, so Charlie Kim, I'm gonna post a recording with Charlie. It's a soul connection, pun intended, and because Mr. Kim, I knew Mr. Kim at in Goleta, and we used to play golf together quite a bit. And he was always good to my girlfriend Joy, who was her father was a taxi cab driver, Catholic taxi cab driver. I stayed with her family for like longer than I don't even. Min Jung might be dead. Or she might be still alive. I went there in 2015. Went to the U.S. Army base and the Israeli consulate. We stood under the hoopah or whatever for a second, but as way leads to way, they weren't going to let me work in South Korea legally. But they had their Citrix office there in Seoul, and their internet connection was a little bit faster and all that. So Charlie, but Charlie didn't have to worry about any of those things. Charlie was like my family owns half of downtown Seoul, and I'm working for a Bain company. I got my Harvard MBA, and our family's selling commodities all over the place. We do the insurance for that stuff. Good luck, Andy. I'll give you the conversation. Appreciate it, Charlie. You probably will say that you don't remember the conversation. Maybe you will, depending on your memory sets. But the email address was a Hotmail account, which I had subsequently deleted. But maybe those emails are somewhere in some database somewhere, or not. I don't really know that level of data sets. So yeah. So it is what it is. And then Chris Highlander, all those folks, and Norm was a cool dude from used to be like part of the AGR ilk. I think it's what do they call it, Christian Science or something like that. L. Ron Hubbard stuff, which I kind of like that stuff. It's kind of cool, I agree with some of those things that I don't want to be roped into their level of discipline is kind of cool, and maybe I have a little bit of that program running in me sometimes, but the level of discipline should serve some sort of a greater purpose rather than just the energy production. Hopefully, I'm more than just the energy production. If I'm not, that's okay too. But it's really not okay because I can do a lot more. So that's the problem with buying kosher meat at Trader Joe's. It's not really kosher, but they get the kosher. Yeah, I know Alan Fagan. Used to be the executive director over at OU. Howard Howard Moskowitz had a lot of conversations with Howard. Some emails. Still responds because he's cool like that. I don't know whether he's judging me favorably or judging me negatively, and I'm not sure if he even knows whether he's judging me favorably or negatively. Who will ever know? But I have those correspondence with Howard, spaghetti sauce guy. So, I think part of Big Mind's project was some kid's dad was the develop all the software for some ATM machines for Bank of America, so they know all that stuff. That's why I'm always subject to source and forces. I guess I'm just a little bit of a storyteller still, but I did learn how to do things too. I know how to do a couple things. I mean, relative to my buddy who's running the small business owner shop, what do we know? So what don't you know? Well, I don't know a lot of things. Let's see. So I really valued that time with Charlie Kim. He was a cool dude. I mean, he talked and talked and talked, and I just listened. I was interested. Sometimes I a little bit doze off because my mind wasn't, even though I'd been working online, but my mind wasn't radiating at his frequency. So he kind of helped me raise that mind level. I remember his words, but I didn't really understand his words. I probably still don't understand his words, but I remember the words. And so so what else? Those folks from Ethiopia, let's see, Lydia and Esther and Winnie, they were direct descendants of King Haile Selassie in Ethiopia. My good friend Alman was Eritrea, of course. So I know some of that stuff. Gil from Morocco, all that kind of cool stuff. Let's see. The Citrix folks, I remember the conversation with the CMO of, I think she was the assistant to the CMO over at Marriott. Clear channel bot. But a lot of those account executives, it's just a job for them. It's like, in a different world, it's like them serving coffee to somebody. They don't really have to go out there on it. They do have to sell, but they have to sell in the right way according to They don't have to play that snobbery role. Sometimes I still come off like a snob, but I don't want to. Um, let's see here. Oh, and then the Java developers of Africa. I wasn't supposed to give them a free license because they were supposed to apply for the nonprofit process, but I knew the nonprofit process was a nightmare, so I just gave them. But that was when my sister was literally traveling through Africa. Lisa Firestone, I was in her office, had a conversation with her, and then decided to meet up with them in person. She was featured on Oprah. Um, my mother knows Wat from Indonesia. I think she lived like 3 or 4 doors down from Oprah. People like Oprah. She's getting up there in age though. My pops met some dude that was like worked directly with Anthony Robbins for his nonsense. And then this dude over on Hope Avenue had a small office. This international world speaker. I forget the name of his book, but he gave me a signed book. Dennis Gano of Exoplanning Institute sent me a signed copy of his book. Uh, he's kind of cool. Exoplanning Institute in Chicago. Bunch of Canadians. I think the secret people bought some services from me. I remember when I was all into that secret stuff, and what was I supposed to know? They were just one of the simple customers